Okay, what made me decide that I wanted to be a life coach? Well, it's a very loaded question. I can't say that I've always wanted to be a life coach. It definitely wasn't something that I was even aware of when I was younger. I didn't even know what a coach was, obviously, other than what I had from high school from having those coaches. So I was not even aware of being a coach. But I do remember when I was younger, growing up Catholic, for some crazy reason, I actually wanted to be a priest because in my mind, I thought, what better gift to be able to give people than the gift of God and seeing themselves and loving themselves and knowing that someone loves them. And then I kind of fell out from my religion probably in college years, which I think is such a beautiful gift that we teach our kids religion, we teach them this thing, and so many of my clients, so many people that I run into, they have this kind of trajectory that you were born into religion, you get the spirituality, and then you fall out. And I think that that's the way that it should be, and it's so helpful. Maybe if you didn't do that, that's totally fine. But by falling out, it gives you the opportunity to fall back in. And by falling back in, you're choosing it. And there's something so beautiful when you're able to choose something rather than that thing being forced upon you because it's you saying, no, this is what I want. I think we see that in our relationships, we see that in our lives, we see this time and time again. So I think there's something so beautiful about that. And going back to me, I fell out. I didn't want to do the religious stuff anymore. And I just was so fixated on being better, being the best, thinking that success, we all have this definition. Everyone has their own definition of what success looks like to them. And for me, my definition of success was like money and accolades and respect and all these things. And so that's what I went after. I was going after all these things. I went after the engineering job. I got the engineering job. I wanted to find out who was the smartest of the engineers, and I went after that. I got into that. I wanted the money. I got the money. After I got the money, obviously the money wasn't enough. So then I got into real estate, and I started to buy rental properties, and then I started to do fix and flip. I started to do wholesaling, and started to make the money. And the money was great, but it was empty. It's kind of like the analogy I use is if you have a cup and you have all these holes and you keep putting water in it, whether it's the money or love from other people, whatever, you put all this into it. But because you have so many holes, it just keeps coming out. You can never get your cup full. And it wasn't until I started to figure out how to plug my holes, which was all the internal stuff, which was forcing me to chase after all this external accolades, these external things, money, success, recognition, praise, all these things are what I thought would make me happy. And the moment that I realized that I was doing it wrong, I didn't know what I was doing wrong, but I knew something was wrong, was when my daughter was born. And here I was, 30 years old, chasing everything, thinking that the money, the success, all this would finally make me happy. And I held my daughter in my arms for the first time. And I felt this thing that I never had felt before. And it's sad to say, and it's crazy to think that holding my daughter for the first time made me feel good enough. That I didn't need to do anything, that I just was. And I know that that probably doesn't make sense, but at that moment that I held my daughter, like the trying, the needing to do anything just dissipated. And it was at that moment that I finally felt that love. So it was at that moment that I started to question things because here it was, I had my beautiful daughter. I didn't have to do anything to get it. I didn't have to be anyone. I didn't have to achieve anything. I didn't have to do anything. There was no doing. And in that moment of holding my daughters, I was just being. It was just me. And that's when I realized, I thought, at least at the time, that there's something wrong with me. That there's something wrong with why couldn't I feel like that all the time? And that's when I got fixated with human psychology. So this is when I was 30, so over 10 years ago, that I got fixated on psychology, human behavior, the mindset stuff, all this, because I wanted to understand like what was going on, like the neuroscience inside the brain, like what is happiness, Why can't I feel like that? Why do I feel like I'm not good enough? Is there something actually wrong with me? Because on paper, everything looked perfect. I had an amazing wife, had an amazing house, had an amazing job, everything in my life. If someone would have saw it, it was like, oh my gosh, this guy made it. This guy has success. But I didn't feel it. I just felt the emptiness. I always focused on what I didn't have because nothing was ever enough. And so that's when I started to study all this stuff, and I got fixated on the psychology, human behavior stuff. And going through this, I just learned so much about myself. I learned so much about the human mind, what we're capable of, what we prevent ourselves from doing, like how amazing, how beautiful we really are, but we don't see it because we're always so fixated on what we aren't. And I didn't realize that I was discovering anything different. I didn't realize that this meant that I was going to be a coach or anything like that. But just, I guess I was just following my curiosity. And from following the curiosity allowed me to discover all these things. And by discovering all these things, I started to want to share it because I just loved this stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, if I don't know it, how many other people don't know this? And I saw it when I saw the people that were hurt and they thought that there was something wrong with them. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect how you are. You just don't know any different. No different than, growing up in America only knowing English. Like, you can't be mad at me for not speaking another language. You can't be mad at yourself for not understanding how your mind works, for not understanding how your emotions interact with your daily actions, how all this stuff is making you who you think you are. But you really have the power and the ability inside yourself to become and to do whatever it is that you want to do. You just haven't learned it yet. And so I started to teach this and tell other people, obviously, as I was learning it. And by doing that, that's what I realized. Like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. I love to share the love with other people. I love to watch someone else have that breakthrough where they finally see, oh my gosh, I am amazing. I am love. I am perfect who I am. And I want to use that to become better. Not that I'm not good enough and I have to get this to be better, but I'm perfect how I am, and I want to use that energy to keep striving to these amazing, amazing feats that I didn't even think that was possible. To redefine who I was into who I want to be. And so the more I shared this with people, the more people got excited and people were reaching out to me, and I was like, well, this is the craziest thing ever. Like, I don't know how. I don't know how I'm going to do this. But this is my mission. This is what I want to do. I want to help people love themselves for who they are and what they are today, and inspire that to go and achieve what they didn't think was achievable. And I think that's what made me want to continue down this path. And if you were to ask me, like, okay, what's the specific moment that made me realize that I was ready to be a coach? I remember I was training some of my virtual assistants in the Philippines, and I would help them with their goals and stuff like that. And they mentioned to me one time, like, Creighton, why don't you do this? I was like, do what? And they're like, oh, why don't you coach people? You're so good at it. I was like, oh no, that's crazy. I'm an engineer. Like, again, my identity. I was so fixated on my identity. I'm this, I'm not that, I can't be that. That it kind of just brushed over me, and I was like, oh, that'd be interesting. I wonder how I could do that. And then the one that I actually knew that this is who I was supposed to be is when I was at a meditation retreat. And at this meditation retreat, I'm sending out all this love, sending this energy out to people that I could think of. And I send love out to my sister, my brother, and all this. And then all of a sudden, I saw my littlest daughter come running to me. And obviously, I didn't see it, but I felt this, or at least I think I felt it. Who knows? But I felt this energy of, like, just so much love. And it made me sad because I remember what it was like to feel 30 years ago when I didn't have kids and all this, and I didn't know what it felt like to feel full love, to be loved, and to have that much love in your life. And that's when I decided that, oh my gosh, I want to make sure everyone in the world has the opportunity to feel this amount of love. And after I came out of that meditation, that's when I decided that I actually went home and I put in my notice at my engineering job and I quit, not knowing how I was going to do it. But I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to spend the rest of my life, whether it works or not, of helping other people love themselves and feel the love that I get to feel on a daily basis, and to use that to power them to achieve what they thought was impossible. So that's how I became a coach.